Hello everyone, so today what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to write a server in C using WinSock. So this is only available on Windows. So if you're a Windows user, I would highly recommend you use Visual Studio 2022 for this, as it can get quite rough with GCC and Visual Studio Code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new project after loading up Visual Studio. Just give it a little sec. Any day now. So there we go. So I'm going to create a console application. It can be an empty project or a desktop application depending, but I'm going to use console for C++. I'm just going to do it in C, and I'm going to call mine hang on a sec, server example, and I'm just going to change my location, so give us a sec. So just going to pop it straight in here, and I'm going to create it. So it's just creating the project. And now in here, now we do not need this main server example.cpp file. We just remove this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new item, and I'm just going to call it server.c. So once we're in here, after creating the server.c file, you will be able to see that we have an empty file. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start off by defining macros. And we only need to define one macro, and that's going to be called Unicode. So I'm going to check if it's not already defined by hashtag if and def. I'm going to do Unicode. I'm now going to hashtag define. So hashtag if and def stands for if not defined. I'm going to hashtag define the macro Unicode. And then the reason why Visual Studio is not happy is because we need to end the if statement, which is end if, and this only applies for macros. Now we need to include our libraries. So I'm going to include standard.io.h, and I'm going to include, and this is where it gets platform specific, WinSock2.h. And then we need to include WinS2, and it autocorrects to this. I'm just going to finish off by tcp/ip.h. And there we go. And then I need to include windows.h, not windows.ai.machine-learning, windows.h. Now the last hashtag we need to include, or the last thing starting with a hashtag, is we need to create a link or a way for the code to be linked, because you'll get a bunch of link errors. So we're going to do hashtag paragma, and it's going to be com, and it's going to be lib, and then we now need to find the library file, which is by the name ws2, and it's going to be _32.lib. And that's it, no semicolon needed. Now I need to create an int main. I'm going to start off with void, and here we go. So now first up we need to create WSA data variable, so it's going to be called WSA data, and we're not going to use this for much, just starting up WSA. So WSA start up, and the first argument is the version that we request of WSA, which is going to be starting with make word. It's going to be 2.2, version 2.2. Now we need to find the data, or we need to access the data variable, which is going to be data. Now we need to create a socket. So we need to do socket. I'm just going to call it server, and then it's going to be equal to socket function. And we need what kind of families it's going to be in. So, for example, the type of IP it's going to read is AFINet. The type of it's going to be SOC stream because it's going to be streaming data. And then the protocol is going to be IP proto. It's going to be _TCP because we're coding a TCP server. The next thing we need to do is code an address for binding. So I'm going to start off by struct, and it's going to be sock addr _in. It's going to be address. Then address dot, and it's going to be sin family is equal to, like before, AF inet. Then address again dot sin port. It's going to be, this is what port it's going to listen on, and I'm going to do 880 for this example. And then what we need to do is we need to do inet, and it's going to be pton. And the first one is the family, so that's going to be AF inet. And then this is going to be IP address, so local IP address 127.0.0.1. And this is just the local IP address that many people use. And then the buffer is going to be at address dot sin addr for sin address. Next thing we need to do is bind it. So we're going to do bind. It's going to be server is the first argument. Then we need to convert it because it's not sock addr as you can see here. It's sock addr in. So the way we do that for type conversion is open brackets. And in C++ you can just do sock addr pointer, but that wouldn't work. Because in C you need to put struct sock addr because it's a struct. And then you do pointer, and then we do an at address reference, and it needs the name length, so the length of address, which is going to be size of address. So now what we need to do is we need to listen for connections. It's going to listen, and it's just going to be server for the socket, and backlog is the amount of waiting connections. So I'm going to do 2. But you could do whatever number you want in here. Then we need to do socket for client. So I'm going to do client, and it's going to be socket. It's actually not going to be socket, my bad. It's going to be accept, and then it's going to be server for our server. And then we just pass null and null for these. Next thing we need to do is we need to create a buffer. So we're going to do char buffer, and it's going to be 1024 equals, and we're going to set all elements to 0. And now what we need to do is we need to do receive. It's going to be client. It's going to be buffer. That's going to be size of buffer. And then flags we're just going to keep 0. And now we're going to do w print f. And I'll show you in the next video how to set the client, and then we'll get these two talking to each other. But for now, this is just a setup, so this is part 1. And it's going to be, well, no, it's going to be buffer. And we need to close socket. It's going to be client, close socket, server. And it's going to be WSA clean up. And then we're going to return 0. So there we are, that's how you code a TCP server in C, and now we're going to run it. and you should be able to see. There we go. So now I can see it's listening. Very cool. So that's how you build a server in C. And what I'll do in the next video is I'll show you how to code a client, and we'll get the two talking to each other. Alright, see ya. Bye.